How many calories in 1 year does a single farm produce? That was a question I was recently asked, and that is the question I'm gonna try to answer in today's video. Good morning, Mr. Toby Dog. Good morning, pal. How's it going? Good to see ya. Hi. Hey there, Abby Dog. Were you sleeping in? Oh, you're such good dogs. All right, we got chores to do. Let's go. So how many calories does my farm produce is actually not a question I've traditionally thought about. You see, I've had goals for my farm to be profitable. I've had goals for my farm to feed me and my wife. I've had goals for my farm to be sustainable, but calories have never ever been the goal for me. But you see, the other day I was actually talking to my friend Tim, and my friend Tim is an executive who lives in Brooklyn and works in Manhattan, and he actually probably leads a life that's actually not that dissimilar to me. If I hadn't left my job and moved out of Brooklyn back in 2014. But the other day, Tim and I were chatting, and he asked me this question.
How many calories does your farm produce?
And it kind of had me scratching my head. So last night I sat down in front of the computer with the spreadsheet and I took all of my farm's production totals for 2023 and I got a final answer for you guys. So here on our farm, we raise ducks, geese, chickens, cattle, pigs. We grow trees, we raise bees, we do maple syrup production and maple syrup sugaring. We also have like a farm garden that is like our kitchen garden. And while the stuff we grow in the garden isn't really done for commercial purposes and we don't track it as well, I'm gonna leave it out of the equation here. We also grow a lot of tree seedlings, but because those tree seedlings don't really produce food for us, they really just produce income, I'm gonna leave that out of the equation. We do have a sizable number of apple trees that are productive and we get a lot of apples from that. And so I am gonna include those apple totals in our calculations. So the full running list of calorie producing things that are gonna be a part of this calculation are the chicken eggs, the duck eggs, the goose meat, the chicken meat, the pork, the beef, the apples, the pumpkins that we actually grew inside this hoop house over the summer months, which we use to feed ourselves as well as our birds, as well as our pigs, the honey from the bees, the maple syrup from the maple sugaring. That is everything. But now before I give you that information, let me just feed these birds because they're very hungry, especially these chicken piranhas. Back off, like you're becoming pushier than the pigs. Release the Quacken! Yeah, nobody cares. I don't know, should I stop doing it? Let me know down in the comments. Aw, would you look at my Abby Dog? You're just being a good girl. You love sleeping in here. I've noticed this has become like your favorite spot to hang out during chores. You're probably trying to convince me to rub your belly. Oh, you're such a good girl, Abby Dog. You're such a good girl. Meanwhile, Toby Dog is doing some investigations over here, exploring all the chicken poop from the chicken roosts. But yes, my ADHD is allowing me to get too distracted here, so let me get you the data. Because I was actually very surprised when I got into these numbers, and it's a lot more calories than I would have expected. All right, no more distractions. Let's get into this spreadsheet here. So as far as duck eggs go, we produced 382 duck eggs at 130 calories for each. We did 224 goose eggs at 266 calories each. We did 498 chicken eggs at 78 calories each. These are only for collected numbers. Like, I know I had this problem last summer where the crows were stealing all of my duck eggs, and so I didn't count any of the stolen duck eggs. So these numbers are actually a little bit lowered. We also produced 510 pounds of goose meat at roughly 340 calories per pound. We produced 69 sugar pumpkins, or New England pie pumpkins, however you want to term them. And those have roughly 196 calories per pumpkin. We did 860 pounds of pork, and that wasn't just all the pounds of pork, that was like the hanging weight of all the pork that we produced, at 1,099 calories per pound for the pork. And then we produced 33 pounds of chicken meat at 1,085 calories per pound there. On top of all of that, we got roughly 82 pounds of apples. That doesn't include actually the apple drops, so the stuff that just fell on the ground that we didn't collect. Like, that's actually the picked apple poundage. And those apples have 237 calories per pound. Now for the beef, even though I didn't harvest a steer this year and I actually did it late last year, I included it in this total to kind of make it a little bit more holistic for our farm operation. And so there's a little bit of an asterisk to this one, but I'm gonna include it anyway. And we had 438 pounds of beef that came from our steer. And that beef has about 1,137 calories per pound. And I know this is something I don't usually talk about in videos because I'm trying to keep it just like a fun hobby and not adding like YouTube into the mix on producing honey. We actually produced 26 pounds of honey last year, and that has a calorie content of 1,382 calories per pound. And then we did about 4 gallons of maple syrup at 1,179 calories per gallon. And so that right there is all of the totals for the farm for 2023, with a little asterisk next to the beef. Oh boy, do my little piranhas want some chicken scraps? No, these are not scraps for Abby. Come on. Come on, both the dogs have to leave. Come on. These are chicken scraps. Okay, chickens, I didn't want to let the dogs steal your scraps, so here you go. I like to upcycle the waste products on our farm. That's a big part of what we're trying to do here. And so that means the chickens get like all the kitchen scraps. The pigs in the summer months get a lot of those scraps too. They get even more. We even give the pigs like spent brewer's grains and other waste products from other farms. But since we're in winter right now, the chickens are really our sole composting animal. Now, I imagine you're probably hearing me give all of these totals and saying, hey, Morgan, I'm a product of our modern era where I do all of my math by computer, so I need you to make that actually into real numbers for me. Well, don't worry, my friends, I actually got you on this one. So as far as duck eggs go, that was 49,000 calories. Goose eggs, that was 59,000 calories. Chicken eggs was 38,000 calories. Goose meat was 173,000 calories. Sugar pumpkins produced 13,000 calories. The pork produced nearly 1,000,000 calories. The chicken produced about 35,000 calories. The apples produced about 20,000 calories. The beef produced nearly 450,000 calories. The honey produced 35,000 calories. The maple syrup produced 4,000 calories. And so that gives me a grand total of 1,874,045 calories estimated. So yeah, Tim, that's how we're doing here. Now, they'll often tell you that data without context is pretty much meaningless. And I very much agree with that statement. Hey, Macho Man, how's it going, buddy? How are you? So I did take a little time. This thing is frozen solid. And look at some benchmark data to tell you how that number compares to other farms. That's the joy of winter farm work right there. So my experiment of trying to keep the cattle without any electricity continues onward. These are some serious glaciers we're producing. Now I gotta get the camera. It's like a morning gym routine. Now, before I give you that information, I do think it is a little important to contextualize things for you. Because like I said, before I got Tim's question, I'd never really contemplated the idea how many calories our farm produces. And so calorie production has never ever been my goal. Sorry about that, Belinda Carlisle, I didn't see you back there. Because the truth of the matter is, if I was trying to keep things focused on just pure raw calorie numbers, I would probably turn this farm and at least the, 50-ish acres or so that I have in pasture, I would probably turn all of that into high production of like row crops. Because if calories are your goal, then those are probably the easiest, most efficient way to produce a high number of calories in a given year. But that is not the goal here at Goldshaw Farm. Hey, Annabelle, how are you doing? Hey there, Amelia. Hey there, Astrid. How are you both doing? Let me get closer. You're not running away from me. That feels like progress. Oh, when I see Alice B. Tokless hiding behind the both of you, you're becoming very docile. This is good. Oh, you're touching me for the first time. Oh, it spooked you? Didn't really spook me, but I understand. How's my boss cow? Good to see you, girl. Oh, and here comes my little darling. Hi, baby bee. You ready for a little bit more brushing today? Audrey, I don't have any treats this morning. I'm just gonna try to brush baby bee. Oh, baby bee, don't be spooked. You've been liking this brushing. I think she's a little spooked with the combination of me not having treats, having Audrey here kind of intimidating her. Audrey, I'll brush you too if you want. But yeah, my goal here when I started the farm was I wanted to have something that was sustainable for the environment, sustainable for the animals on the farm, and sustainable economically for me as the farmer. And so those have always been the goals I've worked towards. Baby bee, don't knock my camera, please. Come here. Come here. There we go. And so doing things like being a good ecological steward, doing things like promoting animal welfare, doing things like having good biodiversity, making sure that my farm, even if you exclude the social media stuff, is actually profitable. Like those have been the things that I've worked towards, not just producing as many calories as possible. There we go. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Good baby bee. Yeah, you're letting me pet you. You're letting me pet you. There we go. That's what I like to see. That's such a good baby bee. How about you, Belinda Carlisle? You gonna let me brush you? No, you're a little too wild for this. I don't know. you might never be a brushable cow. But as I'm out here looking at the cattle yard today, I'm gonna have to feed them hay, and I'm gonna probably have to scoop up some poops pretty soon. In case if you're wondering, when I get the poops, I usually scoop them up and then I compost them, and they usually end up either going into our orchard or into our garden as fertilizer, much like all the bedding from the duck and goose house. Rise and grind, weirdos! All right, now that I've made more hedges than Sonic, let me share with you guys some benchmark data. So I went online and looked at some benchmarks for like how many calories per acre get produced. And if I looked at wheat, it looks like 6.4 million calories per acre of wheat gets produced. And by the way, these numbers are not necessarily set for Vermont or northern Vermont like us. This is like probably a national American average. So 6.4 million calories per acre for an acre of wheat, 2.1 million calories per acre for an acre of soybeans, 12.3 calories per acre for an acre of corn, and then 17.8 million calories per acre for an acre of potatoes. And so if my goal was to maximize the amount of calories produced here on this farm, I would start raising potatoes. That would be the thing that would actually do the best. Of the acreage that we have here on the farm, you know, part of the challenge is like we use like a lot of sloped and marginal farmland for our pasture, and so that's not necessarily good stuff for growing. But we have about 25 acres, I'm gonna even be a little aggressive and say 30 acres that I could potentially plant with potatoes. And so if you wanted to do the thought exercise here, let me see how the maths out. So 17.8 times 30 equals 534 million calories could potentially be produced on this farmland that we're not producing now. And I know that there's going to be some folks out there who are hearing that and saying, oh my gosh, Morgan, it's a crime that your tiny little rinky-dink farm is only producing in total 1.8 million calories per acre, maybe 1.9 million if you're gonna round it up. And the reality of it all, my friends, is this. Number one is I'm not sure if my farm would actually be profitable if I did that. Because if I'm producing that many potatoes, I wouldn't be able to sell them at a retail level. I would have to probably sell them wholesale in some sort of bulk way, like as a commodity. And then I'm not actually driving what the price is. I'm having to take whatever the market price is. So theoretically, my cost of inputs could end up being higher than the return on production that I'm getting. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we're currently being spied on because I see a Mr. Pablo barn cat creeping up there in that window, licking himself. Hey Pablo, how's it going, buddy? And then in the lower part of the barn, we got our Ginny barn cat creeping around. What's going on, sweetie? How are you doing? I know, it's a frosty one today. You're gonna probably try to climb up me next, huh? Hi, sweetie. I think the other thing I'd have to keep in mind is that I would actually really worry about the biodiversity. When I think about our farm, yeah, it's a habitat for things like geese and cattle. And we have like a lot of things that we do from a plant life and biodiversity perspective in that regard. But if I have like 30 acres of just monoculture potatoes growing out there in that back field, there's a lot of soil health that gets destroyed. There's a lot of insect health. There's a lot of insect life that gets killed off. Bird life. You know, the birds actually use our pastures as nesting, particularly the bobolink. The challenge with all of that is you got to recognize that there's a balance. Like if you're ever optimizing a farm towards just one goal, you're going to find that other aspects of your farm are going to get out of whack. Like more and more as I've been doing this now for a couple of years, one of the biggest things I'm starting to recognize is that balance is arguably the most important virtue. If I were to just focus on maximizing cattle production, it would throw other aspects of the farm out of the whack. If I were to just focus on potato production, it would throw everything else out of the whack. And so part of how I'm trying to do things here is create that balance. I know I'm still skewed in a lot of different ways and it's imperfect, but it's recognizing that thinking about maximizing production and using like a metric like calories as that metric of success is actually useful, but if it's the only thing that you're optimizing towards, you might have some problems. Yeah, you're gonna just drink right from the hose? I don't think I need to feed the boys hay today, but the girls definitely need hay. Aw, look at that Joey Ramone slurping from the hydrant. You like that fresh water, kid? I think the other thing is, nutritionally, the world can't live on potatoes alone. And even when it comes to like the food that you eat in your diet, finding some sort of balance is also really important. And so I know there's probably gonna be some folks who are like hardcore vegetarians or vegans who are probably gonna be in the comments of this video saying, hey, this is why you should only be growing vegetables on your farm and switch to an entirely vegetarian or vegan diet. But the truth of the matter is that accounting for efficiency doesn't account for things like biodiversity or carbon sequestration done through grazing and that sort of thing. And so as always, you need to be very, very careful when you go down a reductionist rabbit hole. But yes, I really enjoyed this thought exercise, so big shout out and thank you to my buddy Tim. You could actually go check out his YouTube channel. He makes really interesting content about being a guy working in New York City, which for me is kind of funny. It's kind of like being able to like live an alternate timeline life and watching his content, so I really enjoy it. Thanks for watching, everybody.